Welcome back. You're watching another episode of Events 2019. Our focus this time round is on the state of investigative journalism in Kenya in 2019. The conversation continued during the break. Let's see if we can bring some of that to light even as we carry on. We're looking at some of the stories that were most impactful for you in 2019, and you can weigh in on this. 22422 is our SMS line. The hashtag is Events 2019. But there might have been some stories that you liked but did not quite catch the attention of the public. Which are those? Let us know. And that's where I want to begin. Asha, which story stood out for you? You thought this was a very good one, but it never got the reaction, the traction that you felt it might have deserved.
I mean, let me first say that it's not because Namu is seated next to me.
He began by complimenting you. So
yes, I mean, let me compliment his team because they've done two pieces. I knew about these stories while we were in Hamburg for the investigative journalism conference. And, you know, your team sort of like mentioned, oh, we have this thing that's coming out. So I was really curious to see what it was about. So African Censored has released Stella's Web and Saving Esther. And I thought they were just really brilliant. Seeing how some of our stories have really just like gotten traction, especially on YouTube, like as soon as the story airs, the audience is like, where is it? I need that link. And I thought it's just incredible storytelling. The fact that they got this data leak, I would want to know how you got it. You know, like share some of the secrets.
And the story is focused on healthcare.
The story is that, if I'm right, that that they got this data leak that sort of like showed the payments that are made through IFMIS. And when they looked at the numbers, they could sort of like piece together what is just wrong in this country. So Stella's Web was about this lady who happened to be the company secretary for how many companies?
263.
263 companies, one company secretary. And it was just incredible that they actually got to interview her. The second one, Saving Esther, to me, I think was just the winner. Esther, who we also, with her sister outside Kenyatta National Hospital, and they were crying because they couldn't get any help at the hospital. They didn't have money, and Esther was suffering from cancer, cervical cancer. And they linked Esther's story to this data that they received, which was showing the equipment leasing scheme and how much money that Kenya has been spending on that scheme, and yet it's not really helping patients. So I thought that Kenyans would speak about these stories more. I don't know if it's like a lethargy that, or like just be bombarded with the audience with a lot of stories. I mean, there were a lot of corruption scandals this year, and perhaps by the time the stories were being released,
Kenyans were like, another one?
Kenyans were just like, okay, Saving Esther, you know, maybe we're too tired. But I felt like that was just amazing journalism that I thought should have had more impact.
Asha touches. Asha touches.
A raw point.
A raw nerve.
Raw nerve somewhere.
In a sense, yes. I mean, a stowaway story, for sure. But like I had signaled at the beginning, there are a couple of stories that got by, and I saw them specifically in print, but also done again in broadcast, where I wasn't sure whether this was a story that was done by an investigative reporter or leaked as, you know, as a complete story.
Part of
to a
some
media
wider
house
agenda.
As a wider campaign to bring down specific individuals, especially in our political elite. I'll say specifically about William Ruto. Now, I say that advisedly because I'm not, you know, I'm not the EACC or whoever to know about William Ruto's guilt or innocence. But what feeling I get is that sometimes there are stories out there that don't connect between the sourcing of the story and the very end. That's him as a specific example, but I've seen it across different things. That, which tells me that we have a problem with the three source rule in terms of verification, right? So you're getting a source. It might be true, but what efforts have you made to verify this?
Independently confirmed
and confirm it
that you have.
So that's an issue. Because what that will do is that it will start to militarize the tools of investigative reporting, and then it becomes like a machine gun that anybody can hold. Remember,
weaponizing corruption.
Weaponizing
the war
exactly, and weaponizing the media specifically for that purpose.
Asha, you look like you want to say something.
I mean, I just wondered. So, for the person watching at home, how do they distinguish a planted story and a legit investigative piece, are there tips that you could give them, especially from the newspaper side?
And I wanted to point out print because for TV and I guess radio, to some extent, it's harder to leak a story because the journalist then needs to go and film for that story. But for you, I can literally give you a story typed and ready, and you just need to reprint it, so to speak, for your papers as well. So, you know, I wanted to respond to what John and Asha have had to say.
I mean, even legally speaking, the printed, we get punished harder than
so you have to work
radio,
harder
TV. So you work harder because once it's printed, it's there. You know, you will have a whole day of that, and someone can keep that newspaper for quite some time. Maybe you not, I don't know, TV, I don't know if you want to go back, but so the standard is quite high, so to speak. But also, when you get it wrong, like for instance, if you're the Nation and you get it wrong, you know, you expose a lot of good work that you've done before, you know. So you want to be sure that you are right, because if you don't do that, then you hurt the stories that are going to come and even the future work that you do. And I agree with you, yes, sometimes you read a story and you feel like this story is really in a corner or being fed to be able to push some specific narratives. That I cannot deny or confirm. but what I can say is that we try, because there's a big push in terms of how to get out the story. There's a big meeting that happens before you get out to go and look for that story. You don't just receive a story and you start working on it. And a tip might come, but they might decide, no, I feel like not doing it. Let us give it to Achuka or somebody else, so that they distance it from, you know, that personal ownership of the story that sometimes makes it very difficult to be able to separate your personal interest and the real merits of the story. So, and then the story must be in the docket. Everybody must contribute to it before you really go out. So you can't just walk in with this dossier and you know the story is ready and you're like, who sent you, where, and where is the story coming from? How do we know? You know, so that happens. But for me, there's something you mentioned about weaponizing that I really needed to jump in at that
And I wanted to know whether you agree with him that it's now becoming a key concern.
You look at it, sometimes you just know that this is a story to bring down this particular person, especially if the story has no follow-up, it has no beginning. You know,
it has no beginning and no follow-up.
So it just comes, it hits and goes. So that immediately hitting, you see the following day, there's a big hashtag on social media. And you know, the funders of the story are already the ones who are doing the hashtag, they're ready, they're waiting for it. You'll even see it being shared. In the moment you see the people, there are some people, when they share a story, you know, they have an interest in it. So in the morning, you just see the people who are sharing some specific stories. You know, they can go to page 15 and share that story from there, wherever it is, and you'll be surprised what is the interest in the story, and they share it within some specific group. So you know there's an interest that they are pushing, and that is why I agree with you that yes, media has actually been weaponized at some point.
Asha, I want you to talk about, so there are different ways in which investigative journalism is being fought, and he's spoken about one of them, but talk to me about the legal process, the courts, and whether you're concerned that the courts could be used to stifle very good stories, and also social media campaigns, that on the brink of a big investigation, a social media campaign is used to sort of disparage your story even before it goes on air.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, obviously. It's happening globally. The top investigative journalists of this world will tell you, I think even, what's her name, Caroline Cadwaladr,
yes,
of the Great Hack, when she did the story about Cambridge Analytica, there was just like a whole army attacking her on Twitter. In terms of the legal issue, for me, I don't see a very direct threat in Kenya, whereas that the courts are now in cahoots with some of these players to kill investigative stories. But I definitely see that as an avenue that people are using to sort of like stifle the journalist's voice, or to delay stories from airing so that they can, or to like a scare tactic, or to delay a story from airing just so that they can get their house in order. Case in point, Sins of Saviors. I think NTV had promoted this story about corruption with what institution? Child services, exactly.
Allegations of corruption.
Yeah, for me, I think the unfortunate thing is that the editors actually decided to hold the story. I think they should have just gone with the story, but I know another media house now picked it up and then aired the story, and in the long run, Kenyans got to know what was happening. I don't know what your last point was, the whole thing about being paid. Yes. To kill stories, or people approaching you to offer you money. I've never experienced that, at least not this year. For some reason, I don't know if they feel like I have enough money, I don't need any, I don't know. Even with our story, Wahiga got many phone calls, you know, proxies were sent his way to go and buy him tea and offer him money.
And I told them, all of them, and we filmed.
Yeah.
Or really?
Being
Yeah, we
offered and
filmed
yes,
part
that
of
as
the
part of the
story.
story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I haven't experienced that, at least not this year, where someone is actually, you know, offering you money to kill or trying to plant a story by giving you money. I think I've just been, I've been outright just to show my credibility and that I'm no nonsense when it comes to that. But there's definitely been those attacks online where even your photo will be shared in groups and in very terrible groups where people have said, you know, do this to her and, you know, attack her if you see her here. So that's the one area that I can say I've felt a little bit threatened.
John, this is a fascinating conversation that could go on and on, but I'm told our time is up. How do you want to wrap this up for us?
By looking ahead.
Okay.
Right? There's very, very interesting things that have been said around this table, but I mean, we don't have time. I'm just thinking about the stories that will be important in 2020 going forward.
Can you give us between 2020 and 2022? Because it seems...
2020 to 2020. Well, of course, on any African horizon is you know, the looming, I don't know if it's threat of the event of a political event called an election. I don't know what's going to happen with the BBI, but that'll be interesting to watch on a political front. But more existentially for Kenyans, directly regarding their pockets, is the story of debt.
Yeah.
Next year is going to be a big year, right, in telling the story about debt in this country. Secondly, and now this is wider, is climate change. I think we underestimate just how radically our lives are going to change over the next couple of years. And I think 2020 will be a watershed in proving that. Given the amount of rainfall that we've experienced now, our falling productivity because of our harvest, not directly related to climate change, because that's, you know, a factor of the use of synthetic fertilizer and stuff like that. And NTV did a really good report. I think it was Zainab Wandati who did a really good report talking about us having 60 harvests left, right? So those for me are the two big topics. And then of course healthcare is going to continue to be like a front and center issue. And I think more investigative reporting needs to be dedicated on that. On a personal front, I'm hoping that there'd be a lot more dedicated investigative reporting in the realm of sports. So I cry sometimes when I remember that Wahiga used to be a sports reporter and did like the one memorable story that I can point to, and there's been nothing since, because sports is a huge sink for corruption. And the problem with that is that given how talented we are as a country, any discipline, our problem is that we consistently disappoint our athletes because some bigwig is eating money with some international organization there or getting money to do certain things, steal per diems. That's on a personal front.
And no media is highlighting that. Exactly. Rigorously.
And these are the ambassadors who now we can say are our patriots, right? And I feel so bad when I see people of such great talent being treated as if they were stowaways. You know, it's very bad. It's very bad, and I hope that more reporting around the
will be done. Anyone with one quick one, looking ahead? This has to be real brief.
I think politics for me, Parliament will be really important for me next year, because everything is happening there. All the corruption is happening there. I mean, the stories coming out of Parliament are crazy, and they're all coming out right now saying that, look, we cannot trust MPs. They themselves are saying they cannot trust one another because they know what happens. So it's a story
we have not done our job.
We just need to go to Parliament and do a proper story so that when Kenyans go to vote next year, but one, they will really know these people, what they are. I think for me, that is a story that we need to put more effort in.
Okay. Anything these gents haven't covered, Asha?
I mean, I agree, politics, climate change, most importantly, food security. I think the story of food will be big in 2020 with the weather patterns. In fact, the first quarter of 2020, I think we're going to have a big story on food. And something else, we're seeing all the pressures of this country, of the world, and how that is affecting Kenyans. So I think crime, and especially murders, murders against women, I'm hoping that that's going to be like a big story that now, beyond just the everyday reporting, that we can finally get some time to go slow on that story and find out why that's happening, why it's so rampant, and why it's not being tackled. Where are the investigations? what's happening in courts in relation to those stories. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much to each of you for being part of this discussion. John Alanamu, CEO, co-founder, African Censored. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Asha Mwilu, Special Projects Editor, Citizen TV. Thank you. And of course, we've also had Paul Wafula, Business Editor with the Daily Nation and Financial Investigative Reporter as well. And thank you for watching. Remember, you can keep weighing in on the conversation. 22422 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is Events2019. This has been a focus on investigative journalism in Kenya in 2019. Stay tuned.